Okay, so we are at the top of the hour, and so I want to welcome everyone to VuTech's inaugural neighborhood chats. We are now live on Zoom and live on Facebook as we have a conversation with a number of professionals in our community and education. We have with us some folks that I'll introduce in a little bit. And so first, again, good evening and welcome to Neighborhood Chats presented by VuTech, a fairly new minority-owned business. The VuTech family is very excited to welcome all of you who are viewing with us, as well as our panels, for the very important discussion on education, both in public schools and at the college and university levels. First, a few housekeeping notes. We are recording this both through Zoom and Facebook Live. So if you would prefer not to be involved in the recording, please post comments and questions accordingly. And for those that are staying with us, help us share this very important content and grow the community. For those of you watching from Facebook Live, start a watch party. And please note that the views and opinions expressed during this discussion are those of the panelists and not necessarily representing the views of VuTech. To be clear, VuTech Chats is a series of virtual conversations with professionals from our community brought together to discuss topics that impact every aspect of our lives. The aim of Neighborhood Chats is to help you, your family, and our community grow and prosper during these uncertain times, as well as into the future as we design our future for ourselves. So without further delay, because we want to use maximum time for our panelists, I'd like to introduce our panelists and the format for the discussion. And rather than spend time reading bios on each of the panelists, we invite you to visit our website at www.vutech.world. There you will find a bio for all of our panelists, and I'll simply give their names and affiliations during this conversation so that we can give them the floor for a few key points, up to maybe 5 minutes, on their perspectives and recommendations for students and parents pertaining to their current positions and the pandemic that we are all experiencing now. So first, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Anthony Pinkard, who is the president of Wilberforce University, who's going to speak to his perspectives as the president of a historically Black college or university. Dr. Pinkard.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kraft, and for the VuTech family for this incredible invitation. And I'm happy to be with you all this evening. Let me tell you a little bit about Wilberforce. Wilberforce University, founded in 1856, is the oldest historically Black college in the nation, founded, owned, and operated by people of African descent. I think that's an important distinction because it says something about the will of the people who in 1856, when most people who looked like us were enslaved in the American South, imagined that they could form a university. And indeed, they did. I happened to have the honor of being the 22nd president of this venerable institution. And so I'd like to share with you my views on what we are all experiencing and what we are attempting to do at Wilberforce as we carve out a new normal and a different way of being post-COVID. I think the first thing that we need to do is to acknowledge that this is an unprecedented occurrence and impacting everyone throughout the globe. In fact, I've often said that there is no individual alive who has ever experienced something like this. I refer to the pandemic of 1918, which was the last pandemic of this magnitude. And even if someone was an infant then, they would not have any memory of that. So we are on the planet all experiencing this at the same time. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because in acknowledging that, that's the first step for gaining agency over how we respond to something that oftentimes feel outside of our control. I also think that it's important, particularly for young people, but all of us, to recognize that our mental health is connected to our physical health. We are one body, and to the extent that during this time of isolation and physical distancing, where we might feel that we are alone, we have to understand that while we might not be together, we all are going through this together as one. And so I would urge young people particularly to keep in mind that it's important to maintain a healthy diet. All of this may sound mundane, but it is important to maintain a healthy diet, to get proper sleep, certainly to move about, to get a lot of exercise, and importantly, to follow the guidelines that are currently in place for us to keep ourselves safe and minimize the risk of contracting this COVID virus. And there are a number of other things that we can do as well. I would urge young people to read as much as you can, as often as you can. Read what you like, challenge yourself to read everything so that you can certainly be informed. That also provides a sense of personal agency over what you're able to control. Read, information is power. I would also urge you to write during this period, to write your feelings down. You might do it in a journal, you might do videos, but now it's a time to really get in touch with what you might be feeling at this time. I would encourage those of you who are in university and will be continuing, be in touch with your professors. They would love to hear from you and talk about maybe establishing a reading list in preparation for the fall, in whatever instruction might occur in the fall. I would also encourage you to engage your classmates in virtual environments, chat rooms, interest rooms, so that you are continuing to be challenged mentally and physically, and that you recognize that learning should not stop during this period. It simply takes place in a different way. I do think that it's important for us to recognize that young people do in fact operate in a virtual environment. And so at Wilberforce, as we're planning for the fall, we have even abandoned language like online or distance learning. And we are saying a virtual environment is the environment that we will begin to explore and be innovative and creative in ways that will challenge our students to imagine themselves learning, gaining information, gaining new experiences in a different way. I'm really intrigued by the work that VuTech is doing, as Dr. Kraft explained to us, some of the work that they'll be doing this summer in virtual environments. And I think that that is an incredible opportunity for young people to recognize that learning should not cease. So we want you to be active. We want you to be physically active. We want you to be mentally active and psychologically active, and to protect yourself during this period. I also think that with regard to what are some of the solutions that colleges and universities might be able to offer, I think, particularly given the information that we have most recently gotten in terms of the spread of this virus, that the single most profoundly significant thing that we can do is to take full responsibility for our behavior when we are in public spaces. That might sound simplistic, but it is a really profound action of personal agency and personal responsibility. Wear a mask when you're in public spaces. That's important. We have enough information to know now that wearing a mask can mitigate the spread of this virus. We know that. That's information that's coming to us from reputable public health officials. Maintain a social distance when you are in public spaces. We recognize that that can help us mitigate, again, the spread of this virus. Wash your hands often. Use hand sanitizers often. we know that this can help us mitigate the spread of this virus. So in terms of solutions, it begins with us. And I think that, again, because I think it's worth noting that the single most profoundly significant thing that we can do as individuals to stop the spread of this virus and to take back control of our lives and our communities is to ourselves assume personal responsibility for managing risk and managing the spread of this virus. And let me get on a soap opera for just a moment, and that is, I believe that the American value of individualism over communal responsibility, if we don't move away from that in this period, it will be our demise. This idea that wearing a mask is somehow acquiescing to some government telling you what to do, or it is in some way a way of suggesting that your rights have been abridged, or that you have control, you've lost control of yourself, of your rights as an individual. We have to dispel those notions, because this is about being a responsible member of a community. And it is a community that takes responsibility right now as we're facing an agent that is deadly to everyone. And we have a responsibility and a way of preventing that from happening. So we are at Wilberforce looking at ways to open the university in the fall. We recognize that we need to do a number of things to mitigate transmission of this virus, to follow the protocols for infection control. But we also recognize, and I'm sure the clinicians on the panel will recognize this as well, and parents who are listening, young people are going to do what they do. And it is part of being young that you feel vulnerable. You feel invulnerable, invincible. You don't imagine yourself getting sick when you were young. You just don't imagine that. And we hear young people now saying, well, this virus is just it's just like a bad cold. That may be so for young people, but remember, there are others in your life who are much more vulnerable. So be responsible, and we will do what we can to make sure that the educational environments are as safe as can be. But we're all in this together, and we really must be responsible individuals and act responsibly if we're going to get past this pandemic and move to the other side. Young people, please know that we will get through this. Those of us who are older, we recognize that it's part of the rhythm of life. We will get through this. We will get through this. This too will pass. But in the meantime, we need to be responsible. And the final thing that I would say, responsible and behave responsibly. The final thing that I would say, particularly for young people and all of us who are in the midst of this, be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. And surround yourself with people that love you, that affirm you, and that celebrate you. Now is not the time to be involved in toxic relationships, toxic friendships. You want to surround yourself with light and love. And this is another way that we will be able to get through this incredibly uncertain and difficult time. We have some things that we can take that are ours, that we can do to make us stronger and to get us through this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pinkard. What amazing information and advice and suggestions that you have for us as we're dealing with this pandemic and dealing with each other, and perhaps in closer proximity than we're accustomed to. So those insights of being kind to each other and being kind to ourselves are truly wonderful, wonderful insights. So I want to shift now before we start taking questions, and I want to invite our audience to share your questions in the chat, either on Facebook or in Zoom. And once we've gotten through our initial suggestions from our panelists, we will take questions through the chat from our panelists. So please share your questions in the chat. And next, I'd like for us to welcome to your screen, Mr. Osubi Craig, who is the director at the director of the Center for Arts, Migration, and Entrepreneurship in African Diasporic and Music and Dance at the University of Florida. So I will invite Osubi Craig to take his Zoom off of mute and to share with us his insights.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Kraft. And thank you, President Pinkard, for your remarks. I'm going to kind of talk really from two perspectives. One, being at a state supported institution in Florida. Florida is now emerging as one of the hot spots of the states that have new high concentrations of positive COVID tests. It has been interesting. I literally just this evening, right before we got on the call, received my email saying that my COVID test had come back negative and that I was authorized to come back onto campus to be in the office from time to time. And so the university is going through that process of inviting faculty and staff to do so. And we have been out since really mid-March. So preparing to make that shift. And it's really for us at the Center for Arts, Migration, and Entrepreneurship, we are a new research and service center that is coming out of the College of the Arts. We are an outgrowth of a moonshot initiative that University of Florida had in 2018 that really then took hold in 2019 with me coming on as the inaugural director. And in that, our strength and really the pathway forward for us is really about gathering faculty members. And so it's interesting that our largest programs that we had set for the spring either were canceled or had to move into a digital space. And so making that adjustment has really provided us a lot of opportunity to rethink, number one, what does it look like to engage? And I think one of the things that I thought about listening to Dr. Pinkard is that really coming to a university campus is really all about community. At the core, the Academy is about gathering people together to share ideas, for discourse, for research, for analysis. And at the core, how do we then do that if we can't be in the same space? Literally, our classrooms are designed where you're shoulder to shoulder with other students. Our faculty gatherings are faculty gathering in small places to have conversation back and forth. And now a lot of the things that happen outside of the classroom that are so important to what goes on in university life now have to be rethought and in many ways presented on platforms like we are here today. And so for us as a center, we began looking at how is it that we're going to still be able to be effective in that. And our maker in residence, an artist by the name of Kudus Onikeku, who is the artistic director of Q Dance Center in Lagos, Nigeria, took his fourth iteration of a gathering called Dance Gathering, which brought artists from all over the world would descend on Lagos, spend 2 weeks together, collaborating, working together, developing performances. And then over the course of 2 days on one of the most well-known streets in downtown in the business district of Lagos, Broad Street, take that space over and have outdoor public performances. Well, one, no one was able to get on an airplane to fly to Nigeria. No one was able to gather, things literally got shut down completely. And so I went through the process of taking this idea of bringing people together and then doing it through Zoom meetings and connections like this, and had a 2-day dance festival online that they broadcast on YouTube, 5 hours of content, artists that were in Lagos and in Johannesburg and in Chicago were all collaborating together on pieces. And so you had this coming together, even though people were physically apart. And for us as a center, it was really a powerful and in many ways revolutionary shift in mindset of it's not just a matter of canceling, it's a matter of how we rethink our approaches to things. And so I'm going to focus more on now for the faculty side, how we begin to make those adjustments. And so I took part in a lot of meetings inside of our college with other directors and faculty members around how to deliver a dance class when there's no studio, how to deliver a music class when you're not in the room to hear the pitch from the student. How do you deliver an arts class? And so our center got an opportunity to do some programming specifically for one of the local middle schools, and took an idea that we had talked about, possibly something 3 or 4 years down the road, called the Virtual Creative Arts Academy. And so we have began to build online modules for sixth graders at this middle school, for them to have arts experiences where they log onto our system, they go in, and it takes them through some different exercises that focus on spoken word, focus on dance, focus on photography, and motion capture filmmaking. And really all designed with, number one, physically engaging the body, so that sitting inside the house and sitting in one spot and looking at a screen all day is not the answer. Getting outside and letting the sunshine hit you, physically moving your body, activating your whole self is important. And then also stimulation and making sure that, okay, I know how to give you some math class, and I know how to give you some science class through Zoom, but how do I get you to go through a movement exercise in the same way? And so doing that in a way that, number one, is exciting to sixth graders and also interactive enough so that they have an experience that's also personalized to them. And so we are still in the process of developing it. It's going to roll out right in the middle of July with a summer school focus session that we're really excited about, and run this pilot, which is going to teach us a lot. And the one thing that I love about children is they'll tell you the truth. If you ask them and be like, how is this? They'll be like, oh, this is terrible. Okay, well, we'll change that. No problem. We'll make an edit there. But we are excited about, for us as a center, really the focus on emerging a new technology and how we utilize the tools that we have available. And I think back for myself, if I would have told somebody 10 years ago that we would have a meeting with people all over the world with live video, and you can share your screen and slides and all of this stuff, people would be like, whoa, that's future. But I mean, you're talking about future. And now to see, my own children interact with their relatives and their friends who are in other cities doing other things, and it just be a normal thing to do a video chat live and in person. So how we begin to make that change and modification. And for us as a center, our charge that we are coming from is that the Center for Arts, Migration, and Entrepreneurship intends to connect, nourish local, national, and international arts and cultural networks to boost the speed, durability, and effectiveness of cultural innovation, cultivate the relationship between artistic production and economic sustainability. And for us being in the state of Florida, Florida is one that is definitely focused on the arts and how important that is to our economy. Tourism is one of the major economic drivers in our state. And so for us as a center, we're looking at the places where artists are creating work, how that affects quality of life, and also how does that affect the economic factors. And it's not just all about the money part, it's also about the value creation. And so for us, we are focusing on how important it is that we are creating opportunities for creatives to share the important content that they have, as well as making sure that those that are the content creators are able to reap the financial benefits from that content. And so I think that this opportunity in this moment of COVID and what we look for in the future is really about rethinking and readjusting our perspectives on content creation, on the development and sharing of ideas, leveraging technology, searching out new ways to leverage the technology that we have to rethink how we apply it in this circumstance. And I think for students, and I look at my children specifically, about them making the shift of being in the classroom to then having their classes online and checking in with teachers and having to work independently, that in many ways, everyone is having to adjust that. And there is a lot of uncertainty. I for myself, have concerns having children at home to go onto campus and be in a sea of 55,000 people, not including staff and faculty, to then bring those type of environments back home. So how we do that safely. And I think what Dr. Pinkard said, as well as we must count on each other to do the responsible thing of having a mask on and washing our hands And it's interesting that as someone who travels internationally, a lot of the tools to deal with this are just the simple thing of washing your hands and being vigilant about that, and then having a mask. And I remember traveling a lot internationally and seeing people walk on planes and put masks on. And until this moment, I had never even considered ever doing that. Also knowing how when you're in an airplane, you're in a very much closed environment. And so again, I'm thankful to be where we are with the opportunities to be able to deal with the situation. And I believe that, you know, with all of it, it's really a matter of assessing the tools that we have and making those adjustments. But I think that there's a growth opportunity for us in education out of this moment of rethinking how we deliver our information and content to our students, how we deliver it to our communities as a whole, as we're doing here with VuTech, and think that there's really great opportunity for us moving forward. So thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Kraft.
Thank you, Osubi. That's amazing. It's like I continue to build on what I'm hearing from Dr. Pinkard and from you. I'm hearing be kind to myself, make sure that I'm attending to my emotional and mental self, and make sure that I'm rethinking how I'm doing everything in my life, and rethinking activating my total self, not just my mind, but my limbs, my arms, my heart, my brain, all of it. So thank you so much. That's, you know, I'm just building on all of this great information that I'm hearing from you, that I'm hearing from Dr. Pinkard. And now I want to bring into the conversation Dr. Laura Daughtery, who is a faculty member at the National Catholic School of Social Service at the Catholic University, and to bring in not just the social work perspective, but also the perspective as a tenured faculty member at an institution of higher education. So I definitely can't wait to hear what she has to say, and welcome Dr. Daughtery to the conversation.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so instructive thus far. I always say about life that if you can learn something, it's a good day. So I come from the perspective also as the chair of an undergraduate program, in addition to being a social worker. And as I've thought about these issues in the past couple of weeks, there are three things that stand out to me. One is there are families that need to have some very difficult conversations, and they come in three separate areas for me. The first is whether the child decides to go to school or not. This is the freshman, right? Because for many families, what we're hearing at our school is they're saying, well, you know what, they're just going to take a gap year and take some classes at the community college and then begin again next fall, because by then everything should be straightened out. Because for those families, the collegial experience, the community experience is most important, not necessarily the academic experience, but the collegial experience. The problem with that decision, it is a decision, is that, as we know, young people are not really conscious of the passage of time. They're just not. And so the decision to take a gap year has two problems with it. One is you're going to graduate, it's going to postpone your graduate school plans by a year. If you're going to medical school, if you're going to law school, if you're going to do anything else after school, all that has to be postponed by 1 year. The other issue is your transfer credits. Not all universities take transfer credits from community colleges. So many schools have websites where you can look it up and look and see if that class has been approved by the university. Because if it's not, then you've just taken a class for nothing, and it's not going to help you graduate on time. So you need to sit down with your child, parents, and talk this through about what are the pros and cons of a gap year. What does that mean for my future plans? One of the things I've been thinking about is if you're going to, a prestigious medical school, your pool is going to be bigger than if you continued on, because now you're going to also have the students who did start next year and will be part of that pool, and you're an add-on to that pool. So it might be harder to get into places that you really want to get into. But those are one of the things that families ought to talk about. The other issue is just general health. We're in the middle of the pandemic. what happens, or what I find, is that students are reluctant to make use of the university student health resources. In general, I get emails every day, Dr. Daughtery, I can't come to class because I have a headache. And so I have to say, well, have you accessed student health? And they're like, no, I don't want to go over there. And so I have to say, okay, so if you don't access student health, you lack the documentation to prove that you were sick. And so you're absent. You're just absent. And that has a consequence for your grade, because it says right on my syllabus, mandatory attendance. So you're absent. So they have this reluctance to use the student health service. Also, if there is an outbreak, the student health services will be overwhelmed, right? There'll be too many students in there to get your kid in there. So what mom and dad need to do is have a serious conversation with the kid about step one. You wake up, you have a headache. What do you do? Who do you call? Where can you go? And then mom and dad need to call their insurance company and fight it out with them, because they're not going to be helpful. Fight it out with them about where their kid can get immediate emergency care, right? So that the kid gets the care. The other thing about health is if your kid is already on medication and you send them off to school, your little local national chain does not have every medication on their in the storefront. They might have to go out to the warehouse and get that medication. So your kid is sitting up in the room for 3 days without medication because they forgot. They forgot to order the medication in time. So you need to sit down with your kid and work that out. The other thing parents often do is if their kid is seeing someone, a mental health provider, they say, okay, well, just come home early on Friday and go to your provider and we'll work it that way. Well, that's a solution. The problem becomes college exacerbates all those issues. And you need to have somebody who has eyes on your kid, who your kid can get in an Uber and get to in case there's an emergency. So if the provider is out of state, that is a recipe for disaster. And we've had multiple incidents of that happening with kids, is that the parents assume that because their insurance only pays in New Jersey, you can only have a New Jersey provider, and then things happen. The other thing, particularly for students of color, parents need to sit down with them and say to them, you are not responsible for explaining racism or Black Lives Matter to anybody. And it's perfectly okay for you to say to someone, I don't want to talk to you about that today. I don't want to talk to you about that. I don't feel comfortable, because what I'm getting is students of color in predominantly white institutions feeling pressured to have these conversations while people are saying racist things to them, and then them being responsible for remediation plans for the university. They're children, right? This is a social problem. It's not their job. So they need to be comfortable in that space of saying, that is not what I'm doing today. And you need to give them permission, and you need to help them with strategies on how to deflect and get rid of those conversations. Because, they're not going to talk to us about that very much. But it is something that I'm noticing just from interacting with my students, that people have questions, people want to know. So they're like, oh, I know Sally Sue, let me ask her. Well, she may not want to reveal, how much she does know about this issue. She may not want to talk about it. It may be just too much. And so, you have to help your children understand that that is an option for them, not to have that discussion and to move on to other things and to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. So that's I'm really excited about the virtual environment. I'm really excited about the way it expands the way we think and the way it expands how we do our job of bringing up the next generation, because I do believe, like Dr. Pinkard and Osubi, that there are opportunities here and that we need to be looking for those opportunities and trying to do the best we can, and taking care of what we can take care of, and then leaving the rest. Do what we can and just leave the rest. That's all we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daughtery. Some wonderful, again, insights and advice on what to do in terms of taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're attending to what we're responsible for. We're responsible for ourselves. We're not responsible for everybody around us and the whole world, of course, assuming we're not a parent. And I want to, again, invite our audience to share your thoughts, your comments in the chat. We have some great dialogue going on in the chat. We have, comments from Lena, mentioning how important it is that we're thinking about these things and we're having these conversations, especially making sure that we're attending to those students with disabilities and ADD and those with limited English proficiency. I think you'll be pleased, Lena, because we're now shifting gears to the public school environment. And the public school environment is going to be led off by Miss Naima Hopkins-Vinson, excuse me for my pause, who is a vice principal at Oxon Hill High School in Oxon Hill, Maryland. So we now definitely welcome Naima and her thoughts to the floor.
Hello, everyone. I am so grateful and honored to have this opportunity to speak with you. The information that has gone on before, I don't know if you saw my hand claps, but there were some preachable moments. And I'm just so honored to be on this panel. But coming from a public school perspective, that K through 12 perspective, I first want to acknowledge that it's a scary time as a parent myself. As an educator myself, it is a scary time, but we are being a part of history. Your young people they're a part of history right now. And that is really the message that we have to give them as we are going through this transition of possibly returning back into the schoolhouse. So I want you all to know, parents, that district leaders are working tirelessly to develop plans that will provide opportunities for your babies to access learning and enrichment, not only over the summer, but also when we resume in the fall. And what that will look like depends on your district. It depends on the cases and the numbers. And so I know that my district personally is waiting towards the end of the summer to release a plan. But I think that we all can rest assured that all plans will be a hybrid schedule. There will be a mixture of in-class for those that are English language learners, maybe our SPED learners that need that one-to-one interaction. But mostly it will be virtual. Virtual education will definitely continue in some capacity or form just because of the placement. But I want parents to take a breath. I want them to enjoy their time with their kids, enjoy the time of not running around, dropping off, picking up, fixing meals, and looking at the watch, worried about in my own time. And I want you to take this opportunity to engage your young person to develop a love of learning whatever it may be. We've heard multiple examples of opportunities of virtual learning in the arts, in maths and sciences and camps and availability. So I encourage parents to go to their district websites, their local county or city websites for schooling, and see what opportunities are available through the summer. I promise you, your district is as concerned as you are of our children still gaining educational knowledge, and they are offering opportunities, whether it be through the library system or through any type of system, so that our young people are still experiencing engagement. But I want you parents to pay attention to the interest of your young people and seek out programs that will foster in them a love of learning rather than just completing a task. Because if they love to do something, being able during the summer to designate a time period where they can explore it will help them to release the anxiety that they have of going back into an environment that is unknown. And we can rest assured that it will be a new environment. It will be something that none of us have seen before. And we need to have those conversations with our babies so that we are presenting to them this grand opportunity to learn in a whole new way. Parents, we have to be flexible with ourselves. We have to be flexible with our own schedules because we may not know specifically how the schedule will be in the fall time. We need to have those conversations with our employers, with our childcare providers, and with our families so that we know that we have a framework, a skeleton put into place to make sure that the village is surrounding all those parties involved. I also want you parents to make it a priority to participate in your town hall meetings. A lot of superintendents and districts are having opportunities for parents to voice their concerns, to voice what they need in order to feel safe to send their young people back to school. Be a part of that. Make sure that your voice is heard. You are a constituent in this decision, so speak up about that concern. And I also want you to make sure that you are receiving information. One thing that I have really enjoyed in this physical distance, I have been able to become so much more intact with my parents and my community because I'm just an email away. I'm just a phone call away through the beauty of technology. I'm just a virtual presentation away. And my students have been able to interact with me, whether that be through Google Voice or through email. But parents, we want to make sure that you are receiving the information that is needed and that is necessary. So take the time to go on your young person's, whether that be your school website or your district website, and sign up to receive information. Every school in this day and age, we are all existing in this virtual world, have email, have text messages being sent out about distributions of devices, about opportunities available, about town hall meetings and information sessions where you can engage. One beautiful thing that has come out of this is the collective village, specifically in the K through 12 environment. We've been able to have a light shine on the fact that we need support, social workers, we need psychologists when we return back to be able to address the things that were not spoken during the time when we were at home. So I think that it is going to be a beautiful reworking of education when we return back, in whatever form that may be. And parents, I also, as a parent myself, want you to know that your baby's teachers, they miss them, they love them, they cry for them, they are seeking the best for them. I think that the fact that teachers were able to, within a few days, create a virtual environment that engaged young people to the point that they were like, please stop sending information, please stop interacting. It was just overwhelming. And not just those teachers that were already on board with it, but those teachers that were 20, 30 years involved in education face-to-face were able to quickly adapt and become that teacher of record virtually. And that was simply because educators love their students. And it is that love, that care, and that desire to always to seek the best for them that's really going to carry us forth. I'm a believer of public education. I'm a product of public education. My children are in public education, and trust and believe that district leaders are working tirelessly to make sure that we continue in the excellence that we would expect for our own children.
Thank you so much, Naima. That was, the takeaways for me with that, first and foremost, were to take a breath, and how important it is for us to just take a breath and then consider being flexible and actually enjoying this time right now, this opportunity that we have for creating new schedules, for creating new routines, and for creating new patterns. So thank you for that. And also, be a voice for what works for you, what works for your household, and what works for your child or your children. So thank you so much for that. And I definitely want to welcome to the floor, if I may, Dr. Vernessa Bowles, who is the lead psychologist for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, and who will be sharing from her perspective, I have no doubts, as it pertains to special education and special needs children. So Dr. Bowles.
Good evening, everyone. And again, I just want to echo Dr. Kraft. Thank you for putting this together. This has been an amazing evening of information that just continues to build upon each other. I can tell that how you placed us and how you put us together was very intentional, and that's awesome. I'm coming behind Ms. Hopkins-Vinson. I too am in the public school district here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my role is a school psychologist, so I am more hyper-focused on the mental health, emotional health, and I also work with special education populations. So much of what I was going to say has been said. I echo Dr. Pinkard, who started out with saying these are unprecedented times. None of us have experienced this before, and we have to be flexible with ourselves. I keep hearing myself tell parents, teachers, colleagues, We just have to be flexible. We are building this plane and flying it at the same time, and we should all be commended for doing as well as we have been doing with everything that's been going on. So in response to some of my thoughts, I wanted to encourage families to try to think with as much optimism as you can right now. I hear a lot of families becoming overwhelmed with the what ifs, and we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. I know in my school district, we had messages going out weekly because things change so fast. Here in North Carolina, we're waiting on the governor to tell us if we're moving into phase 3 and what that will mean for businesses and wearing of masks. So everything is in transition. So as Ms. Hopkins-Vinson said, we have to be flexible and we have to give ourselves a break. I also encourage parents, and they can tell their school teachers that I said it, to be a parent. We have placed in your lap homeschool teacher role, which is not what you were trained for. You're doing the best you can. Give yourself a break. As a psychologist, what is most important for me is that your child returns to us in good emotional health, that they are not stressed out, they are not frustrated, they are not consumed with worry and anxiety. The educational part, we will work that out. That is our job, to figure out how to put the pieces together educationally. And because we are all in the same storm, in different boats, but the same storm, we understand that things are going to have to be done and changes made. Here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, we have not had any information about what next year will look like, and we don't know yet. And to echo what has also been said, I would encourage parents to clarify your personal value system as it relates to COVID and what you are comfortable with, because it is my assumption that there will have to be options. And if you are uncomfortable with sending your child back into a learning environment, be comfortable with your value system, ask questions, advocate, do what you need to do. There was some information in the chat about students with special needs, which is the primary students I work with. And we have lots of issues. Some students who may have autism have issues with wearing a mask. It may be uncomfortable for them. We do a lot of work with this population with reading faces and body language, and with a mask on our face, it would be problematic. There are some students with special needs who have compromised immune systems, and coming to school when there may be a high probability of infection may not be an option for them. So you have to decide and determine what is best for you and your child and advocate for that. Educationally, I would echo also what has been said. I would encourage you all during the summer to not let the educational gap be so wide. It is summer and they're not in school, but we have been out of school for a very long time. And there already is the summer lag that we experience every year when we come back. And that's usually for most districts about 2 months, and we're doubling, maybe tripling that. So there's going to be some lag. So I think, as Dr. Pinkard said, I always encourage reading. If your child can read a little bit, let whatever they want to read. It doesn't have to be a chapter book. If they like to read information on the internet, there's lots of websites that give news information, magazines, if they want to do a book club with some of their friends. But reading does invigorate the mind, and it keeps them going. Depending on where your child is educationally, you may want to do more or less. For some of my parents of students who know that they have difficulty learning, there is information on a lot of the school's websites. You can log on and try to do a little bit of something during the summer. But again, I don't want students to be overwhelmed or parents to feel like it's their job to catch the students up, because that is absolutely not your job as a parent. And finally, social emotional health is going to be a big push. When we come back to school, Dr. Bowles' stance has been, we have got to look at these children's social emotional health first, and academics are coming, but we don't know what has been experienced. In our district, we had a number of students that we had not made contact with, who did not log on. We were not able to call. So we don't know what has been going on with these families. Homelessness, job loss, they're babysitting 3 and 4 siblings. They may be staying with someone else because mom has to work and there's no care for them. So we've got to deal with them transitioning back into school and dealing with whatever may have happened while they were home. So some quick tips that I've been telling my parents: try to manage stress and anxiety as much as you can. Limit for yourself as an adult, and especially for the children, the amount of information about COVID that you allow them to hear. I would choose one reputable source and listen to that. But if you checked your phone every time something went off or listened to all the different news media, you would worry yourself into a frenzy. So limit the information, be calm and reassuring, have those difficult conversations with children. When they have questions, be honest with them, but children follow their parents' lead. So if we're calm and we're reassuring and we're assured that everything's gonna be okay, then they're gonna believe us. Try to have some routines and stability as much as you possibly can. Self-care is huge. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself as a parent. This is a highly stressful time for parents as well as students. So finding some things to manage your stress, whatever that may be. I don't want to tell you what to do, but whatever you need to do to manage your stress so that you don't have that anxiety and worry build up. And then to stay connected. We're all here in North Carolina, they call it a shelter in place order. So we're all at home, but we can still remain connected. So finding ways, I've seen family Zooms and birthday parties and the drive down the street parades to celebrate birthdays and graduations. I've even gone to the store and I've seen friends sit out in the parking lot and have their cars parked the 6 feet apart so that they can sit and talk and socialize. So staying connected as best you can. And just as everyone else has said, remembering that your number one job is a parent. Parent your children, love on your children, make the best of this time that you have together with them, and let us at the school worry about how to fix the educational gaps that may exist. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Bowles. And again, as she said, she was reiterating a lot of what we've already heard, perhaps from a different voice, a slightly different perspective. Parents, we want you to be parents, and that doesn't necessarily mean parents only to public school children. Parents still have to be parents to their college and university children as well, and you still have to figure out ways to manage your stress, manage everybody's stress, and stay connected and positive during these times. And so, you know, again, amazing comments, amazing suggestions that we have. And so I want to also turn it over to Ms. Shanice Morris-Sharp, who is a community school coordinator with the University of Maryland's School of Social Work Community Outreach Services. And she is also a social worker, as am I, and as Dr. Daughtery is. And so I open up the floor to her and for her remarks.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kraft and VuTech family, for this invitation. I would also like to say a lot of what I planned on saying today has already been said, so I'll go ahead and just echo what all of the wonderful panelists have already said. But I will be focusing on continuing the conversation on some of the solutions that K through 12 students and parents can begin exploring during the summer as they prepare for fall 2020. So there are actually 5 things that I would like to invite parents to begin exploring. The first thing would be to explore your school network. So begin strengthening relationship with your school community. Your school community can include your child's teacher or teachers, principal, school social worker, guidance counselor. And I would say it's important to begin connecting with some of those folks because there may be additional resources or services that your school is offering that you may not be aware of. So continue to stay connected with your school community and everyone that is on your child's academic team. The second thing that I would like to invite parents and students to explore this summer in preparation for fall would be, if you can, begin familiarizing yourself with some of the virtual platforms that your student may be using to access their academics. So it may be different for every school district, but some of these platforms can include Google Meet, Zoom, Blackboard Collaborate. So reach out to your home school to figure out what some of those primary platforms may be and begin familiarizing yourself if you can. I would also like to say for some of the parents who may be concerned with the potential achievement gaps or academic gaps that their students may face during the summer, I would encourage you to reach out to your school to see if there are any academic supplements. So this could be websites or apps like the Khan Academy or Zern Math. There's a bunch of different academic supplements that your child may be able to explore and continue to practice some of those academic skills. I would also like to invite parents and students to begin exploring ways to just unplug from technology. So whether that is cooking a meal or reading a book, playing a game, anything that you can do to just take a break, even if it's just for a few minutes. And this might mean being open-minded or exposing yourself to some newer experiences, things that you haven't done before. So I would invite parents and students to continue to find time to unplug from technology. And lastly, I believe this is already said, but I would like to invite parents and students to explore opportunities for movement and recreation. We know that incorporating movement can help you to re-energize and de-stress, improve mood, and both students and parents need breaks. So find ways to incorporate movement in your day. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanice. It's amazing. There's such great information that has been shared here with us today. And we've got about 4 minutes left in what our scheduled time was. We have amazing conversations and comments that are going on in the chat. So if my panelists will oblige me, I want to at least get a couple of the questions that we have included in the chat in this conversation, and perhaps we can talk about maybe a part 2, something mid to late August as we're entering into the school year. I can't make any promises, guests or audience rather, but I will definitely look into potentially a part 2 later on in the summer as we get closer into the school year. So I first want to start with a question that we got from our chat. And the question reads, how do teachers support parents in supporting their child's emotional health when the parents are hyper-focused on academics? And again, I go back to my previous comment as I give my panelists an opportunity to think about their answer. Parents are not strictly about public school parents. We could also be talking about hyper-vigilant parents as it pertains to their kids that are in colleges and universities. So again, our question from our chat is how do teachers support parents and their child's emotional needs for those parents that are hyper-focused on academics? So I'm not sure who would like to take that first. I think I'm gonna go first with Dr. Bowles, because that's who the spirit strikes me to go with.
Of course you are. That's kind of difficult because our teachers did the best that they could to try to support parents, but like as far as the emotional support, that was kind of a little bit out of their realm. In our school district, our social workers, counselors, and psychologists, we had caseloads of students that we connected with the families. So when teachers did their check-ins with students, and if there was a greater need, they were referred to us. And we tried to reach out and communicate and talk with them. But again, my global message to parents is that during this time, you have got to give yourself and your students a break. This is an unprecedented time that we don't know what's going on. And while it's wonderful to continue education, if that is something that you and your child are able to do, I just don't want to see children getting stressed out. And I don't want parents to get stressed out during these times. So finding what's comfortable for you and your family while understanding that there will be learning gaps. We have missed 2 months of school, and somehow we've got to figure out how to make that up in the next year or so. But that's for the school to figure out. And we, as Ms. Naima said, we're working hard to figure out with all of the special population how that's going to work. And I wouldn't want parents to be burdened down thinking that's their responsibility to over-educate their child at home.
So,
Ms. Naima?
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Bowles. I was going to add that we have to remember that everyone has a lane, okay? And we're all there collectively playing a role. We're a village, but everyone has a lane. And I think that, yes, I can say I know that teachers definitely want to support our families, correct? But I think that in this space that we find ourselves, specifically in this stressful space that we find ourselves, we have to pivot. Okay, we have to pivot to those who are better able to handle it. And Dr. Bowles is very on point that we pivot to our social workers, we pivot to our psychologists, we pivot to our administrators. And I think that communication and forums that allow parents to voice with each other their frustrations, and then having a either psychologist, social worker, administrator there definitely to communicate, these are the solutions, these are the options that are out there that are available, and also allowing us to mitigate between teachers and parents, whatever the concern is, I think is the best option. That everyone has a lane, we stay on our lane, and we shouldn't expect for our teachers to be able to handle not only the emotional stress of the child, but the emotional stress of the parent. And so I just would say, again, pivot. We have your back. We are so excited to have your back, because this is what we live for. We're not in the building. We're not physically seeing our kids. We live for the opportunity to serve. So pivot.
And I would suggest that the exact same thing would occur at the collegiate level as well. We have to remember that faculty members are people as well, experiencing the same degree of stress, trying to navigate these times as well. And so what has been said for K through 12 certainly would apply at the level of university as well.
I would say, echoing what Dr. Pinkard is saying, and I want to be kind of explicit in that, I think one of the things that we as educators at every level really need to start doing it, and I've seen it happen at a few of my last institutions, is just having real conversations about mental health. I think that this moment that we're in, the different things that have happened in 2020 have brought the conversation and some of the stigma around having actual conversations about mental health into a light in ways that I don't think that I've seen if we look back at mental health conversations that were happening in February after the sudden passing of Kobe Bryant. Mental health conversations that are happening right now in the height of the Black Lives Matter movement being re-energized with the different events that have gone on. Obviously, mental health conversations that are happening as a result of COVID. And so there's a different level of space and opportunity to have those conversations person to person and together as academic and educational communities. And so when we start talking about, and I agree that when people talk about the educators should be then supporting the parents, that's a lot to ask, because everybody is managing all of this at the same time. And I think that that's been the most extraordinary aspect of it, is that every person on here has a story about how they had to make an adjustment in their life, with their family, how they went to work. Like, everybody has that story. And so that aspect of it being universal, no matter who you are, having to have made that adjustment has also allowed the conversation of, I had to make this adjustment in my schedule, in how I was going about things to preserve my own personal mental health. And I think that that's something that I hope that we don't lose when we get back to whatever version of the new normal becomes on the back end of this COVID situation.
Awesome. Thank you. So I absolutely feel like that was perhaps the most comprehensive answer to such a question that I've heard during these COVID times. And we have another question from the chat that asks, will schools provide tutoring or something to help catch up for the couple of months that haven't gone on? Before I turn that question over to our panelists, of course, again, to give them an opportunity to gather some of their thoughts. One of the things that I've heard, and I actually saw Dr. Bowles post this on her Facebook page, I believe several months ago, where everybody is in the same boat. There is no kid who's behind, so to speak, whether it's a kid in public schools or a kid at the college or university level. Everybody's in this boat together, as Dr. Bowles mentioned. We are all in this big storm together, just in different boats, riding the waves at perhaps different parts of this storm. So I don't know necessarily that there are any true lags. at the same time, I appreciate parents' desires to want their kid to have the best opportunities that can be afforded to them. So shameless plug, VuTech does offer virtual tutoring. So check out our website, vutech.world, to get information about some virtual tutoring. And I will be mentioning our virtual summer camp that'll be coming up shortly. But I want to open the floor, and I think I'm going to throw it to Dr. Daughtery first to answer the question as to will there be any tutoring available at the collegiate level, and then I'll probably come back to Naima to answer the question from the public school perspective. So Dr. Daughtery.
Okay, so I have had the experience of being on a Zoom conference with a child, and then all of a sudden somebody else slides in, and it's the helicopter parent who wants to know what we're talking about and what's going to happen and what I'm saying to their kid. But I think, Naima's point, stay in my lane. They might ask me, well, what can I? And I'm like, I just get paid to talk to your kid, not to you. So if you have some other needs, there are plenty of things that you can look for online. So the issue of whether we are going to have extra tutoring, of course, tutoring goes on at colleges and universities all the time. People don't talk about it, but we have, people like 7, 8, 9, 12 people who are constantly working with students on academic success. We're now exploring, how we can use the technology to point out early on in a student's career that they're having problems, that they can't seem to, get their assignments in on time, or they can't really produce a legible paragraph. So we are really, those things are going to happen at the collegiate level. And that is, our main job is to keep everybody on the same page. And so I don't think parents need to worry about, well, they've been, online since March and they may have missed something. No, we're going to catch them up and they'll be fine. They'll be just fine.
Thank you, Dr. Daughtery. Go ahead.
I would say ditto. That was one thing that I had in my notes that I did not share. We all know that students have that summer lag in between, those 3 months in between. Right now, in districts across the nation, teachers are gathering to write curriculum for the fall. This curriculum is either being developed for a virtual setting or a dual hybrid setting, but it is being developed, and it is being developed with the mindset that students have not only summer lag, but I'm going to call it COVID lag. And so they are writing curriculum that will be taught by teachers in public and private schools that are including information that students should have received and maybe did, maybe didn't, maybe forgot, who knows, but we are covering it. I can guarantee you that is happening. I know that it's happening in my district, and I know that it's happening in districts in my area, so I know it's happening nationally. But I also want to note as well that you are your child's best friend. And you can ask the question of your principal, of your assistant principal, of your superintendent, any representative, and they are excited to give that answer. Because in all truthfulness, we're proud of the progress and the achievements that we are making, because it is phenomenal. It's history making, and it's great. There's no other way to say it. We are aware of the lag, and we are making room to make sure that your young people, our young people, will be on point come January 2020.
Awesome. Thank you, Naima. So we're about 9 minutes over. I do want to get some final thoughts from all of our panelists. And I promise the audience, I will do my very best to schedule a part 2 with all 6 of our panelists. Again, perhaps mid to late August, going into the school year. So we've got some questions that we didn't have an opportunity to get to, unfortunately, but we've had some wonderful insights, some wonderful suggestions about breathing and being flexible and being kind to yourself, being the best advocate for yourself, for your child, and for your household, and understanding that we're all in this together. And as long as we keep it together as best we can, we will all get through this. And as Dr. Pinker said, this too shall pass. So in some final moments, before I start my shameless pleading with our panelists for an August part 2, I'm going to ask for each panelist to give us about 20 seconds of final thoughts. And I will start in the same order. I will start with Dr. Pinkard.
And thank you, Dr. Kraft. And I would just simply say touche to everything that you said and everything my panelists, my fellow panelists have said this evening. This has been an incredible opportunity, an incredible conversation. I've been honored to be a part of it. I think some of the lessons, they've been just wonderful suggestions in terms of how we can take care of ourselves. I would just leave parents with understanding and knowing that we are all committed to the full development of your child at the K through 12 level and also at the collegiate level. This is the work that we are committed to doing. And we show up every day to give our best so that your child can become their best.
Thank you, Dr. Pinkard. And so, of course, now I'm making my way on down to Osubi Craig.
Well, it's hard to say anything else past what Dr. Pinkard said. He, in many ways, said it all. I will say that this, the one thing that I want to reiterate is that this moment provides opportunity for really innovation and discovery to come up and redesign, reimagine, rethink, and how we're going to approach what the new future looks like. And I think that what is really powerful is that I have seen in this short period of time as we transition into this fall semester, a lot of those innovative tactics, techniques, and then technology being rolled out to really take that learning delivery exchange to the next level. And I'm excited about whether it's a hybrid situation, whether it is a more virtually focused situation, what that looks like, how it develops, and specifically for folks that are in the arts and creative spaces, how that thinking of creative thinking will help to push us into what the future is going to be. And so I want to say thank you to all of the panelists and to Dr. Kraft for the opportunity to be here. This has been a fantastic conversation. And together, we will definitely get through this moment.
Indeed, indeed, we will definitely get through this moment. And we have part of our, we have several conversations going. We've got our conversation where we see our panelists, and we've got a couple of different chat conversations. And so as I turn it over to Dr. Daughtery for her final thoughts, I will say that there have been comments of college students not seeking support when college students are in need of support. So Dr. Daughtery, your final thoughts.
Well, that is a true fact. College students are reluctant to seek support, but many colleges are working on developing systems so that they can evaluate performance from the classwork, and they can intervene. The individual instructor can intervene without, making it a big deal, and that someone will reach out to the student and say, listen, why don't you come over to our Center for Academic Success and talk about your time management issues, because your instructor is saying all your assignments are not coming in on time. So we understand that it's stigmatizing for the students, right? And that we are trying to make getting help something that everybody does routinely. I tell my students that I was a journalist for 22 years, but the first paper I wrote for graduate school, I ran 2 miles across the campus to the writing center to have them take a look at it. I was a professional writer. I know how to write, but I didn't know how to do academic writing. And so there's no shame in your game. You got to do the best you can to get out there. So this forum has really been enjoyable, and I've learned a lot, from different perspectives. And I think this is the kind of conversation that will, actually change a community and actually help people understand. Because whether we realize it or not, most people at home don't know how many people of color are in various kinds of positions to help them understand that they can find somebody who looks like them and they can tell them the real deal and what their kid needs to watch out for when they come into this environment. And so that's the value of something like this, is, having our little faces on the screen. So people say, oh, that guy, he looks like Uncle Jim, that is really, really, I think, a powerful a powerful tool for us to empower the community and also empower ourselves and empower our families and our children and all the things that we need to do. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Daughtery. And, you know, of course, we've talked about the older kids, the bigger kids. And so now I want to move down to the not so big kids who think that they're fully adults at adolescent ages and turn it over to Naima Hopkins-Vinson for her final thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. Again, just thank you for this opportunity. And my final thoughts are just re-emphasizing the partnership that should exist between parents, students, teachers, administration. We are all in this together. And instead of worrying, let's begin to collectively develop even just a skeleton plan of what are our options as we look towards the fall and we look towards this newly developed educational system, because there are going to be some extreme changes in how we approach mental health and how we approach just strenuous learning rigor. As we all saw, when the AP exams were sent to students, that was a huge change from decades of practice. And so I'm excited to see how all of these systems are going to be crafted to best benefit our students and to keep everyone safe. But I encourage y'all to just be a part of the village, be a part of the partnership, and collectively work together. Make sure that you are voicing your concerns and that you are developing at least that skeleton plan of how your family is going to move forward into the fall. So thank you.
Thank you. What I heard was advocate, 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 and plan, plan, plan. And to that end, as we are talking about helping to not minimize, but lessen our fears and work towards having more positive thoughts and experiences, I turn it over to, you know, our last two who are our mental health specialists on the panel. So Dr. Bowles, for your final thoughts.
My final thoughts would be to understand that we are all more resilient than we realize, and that we should hold on to our hope. And that once we start losing hope, that starts the downward spiral. So remember that we're resilient, we can and we will make it through this and continue to be hopeful.
I hear hope, I hear hope, I hear hope. And as I hear hope, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Shanice Morris-Sharp, who I know is going to give us some light and love to carry us through to the end of our panel discussion. So, Shanice.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. So as far as my final thoughts, I really would just want parents and students to know that there will continue to be a learning curve, not only for parents and students, but for school staff as well. So don't feel like you're alone. Take it easy on yourself. Continue to find ways to unplug from technology, stay active, and stay connected with those in your support network.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And that's what I said. And I'm hearing advocate, advocate, advocate. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your kids. Be kind to your teachers. Be kind to everyone around you, because we're all doing the very best that we can. And so as we work towards wrapping up part one, because I've already gotten some commitments, I will tell our audience, I've already received some commitments in the chat to a part two. So towards the end of part one, I want to say that, you know, we have some opportunities through VuTech for virtual summer camp. VuTech is launching our first virtual summer camp that is beginning July 6th. We have orientation that is taking place July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, which is actually already next week. So it's not too far from now, but we've got virtual summer camp. If you visit our website at www.vutech.world, you will see that we've got virtual summer camp available for you, for your kiddos, talking about climate change and the environment, and you can register right there from the website. So please check out virtual summer camp. And in addition to part 2 of this discussion, we are also planning another neighborhood chat so that we can hear from our youth. We can hear from some adolescent boys and girls who are talking about their experiences in these times. So of course, we're seeking as adults to be led by the children that are going to be taking care of our tomorrows. So join us on July 22nd for our next neighborhood chat, and the children shall lead us. Same time, same place. The registration will soon be coming for that. So as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you again to our panelists, Dr. Pinkard, Osubi Craig, Dr. Laura Daughtery, Ms. Naima Hopkins-Vinson, Dr. Vernessa Bowles, and Shanice Morris. Thank you so much for being such an amazing part of VuTech's inaugural neighborhood chats. I'm so excited for what has happened here today, for this amazing conversation that we've had, and for our part 2, because it's been so amazing.
Awesome.
And I bid you all a good evening.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. You guys
Bye,
stay
everyone.
safe.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.